Honourable member for Flamborough-Glenbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this month, I rose in this House and cited the Realtors Association of Hamilton-Burlington, who in January had confirmed that the average house price in Hamilton, Ontario was over $1 million. Well, since then, Mr. Speaker, the numbers for February have come out, and the average home price in the Hamilton-Burlington area is now over $1.1 million. That's a 10% increase in just a month. And so, Mr. Speaker, you can imagine a young person in Hamilton who's saving up for their first home, that in a single month, the price of their starter home has increased $100 grand. And 50% of Canadians under the age of 40 say that they've given up on the dream of home ownership. And who can blame them? Since this government has come to office in 2015, the price of the average home in Hamilton has gone up by 200%. That's double the national average. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very concerned. And what concerns me most is that there is no effective, realistic, comprehensive plan to remedy this situation. When I spoke earlier this month, the response I received from the Minister of Housing was to advocate for a tax on vacant homes as a solution to the current crisis. And at that time, vacancies were on the decline, I might add. A 1% tax on vacant homes will not provide the relief that the people of Flamborough-Glenbrook so desperately need. But perhaps what is more discouraging is that a 2-year ban on foreign money in our real estate market, the one solid proposal that the current government had brought forward, was defeated by the Liberals at the Finance Committee just a few weeks ago. So, Mr. Speaker, the National Housing Summit was yet more talk and no action. The people who elected us sent us here to create solutions to these challenges, but that's not what they're getting. Sadly, not only is this government failing to enact policies that will help Canadians, they reward CMHC executives with bonuses of $48 million. That's a disgrace. That is the very organization that is tasked with making housing more affordable for Canadians, and yet the dream of home ownership has never seemed more distant for so many. And so that's not worthy of a bonus. Housing supply is the problem. We have construction deficit in this country of 1 million homes to meet current demand, over half of which are in Ontario. But let me break that down even further. Just to keep pace, we need over 110,000 homes built in Hamilton alone. Yet the federal government's Accelerator Fund proposes to build just 100,000 homes nationwide by the year 2025. As an example, last week, it was announced that there would be 72 affordable housing units built at a cost of $13.2 million. And while I applaud more funding for affordable housing, this doesn't keep pace, and it's not quick enough to even make a dent in the supply deficit. So more needs to be done. We need a realistic and comprehensive plan. We need to fire on all cylinders to combat the housing crisis and build more supply. This issue impacts my constituents very directly, so when are we going to see less talk and more action?
Secrétaire parlementaire au ministre du Logement et de la Diversité.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to thank my colleague from Flamborough-Glenbrook for the question. I'm happy to talk about our government in tackling house affordability. My colleague has asked for a plan. We have one. We launched a national housing strategy in 2017, the first of its kind in Canada history. It's an ambitious 10-year plan backed by more than $72 billion in investments. I was deeply disappointed to hear the Conservative member from Stormont Dundas South Glengarry yesterday stand in this House and say that we should pull back on the national housing strategy. I couldn't disagree more, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the Conservatives, we believe we need to make historic investments in affordable housing, and that's exactly what we're doing. Through the National Housing Strategy, we have invested over $20 billion. That's thanks to a range of programs that address the different housing needs of Canadians, from shelter to community housing to market rent to ownership. One of those programs, the Rapid Housing Initiative, exceeded all expectations through 2 rounds of applications. It has been very popular with our partners and will ultimately result in the quick constructions of more than 10,000 new affordable housing units, including more than 200 units in my colleague's city of Hamilton. But we recognize that we still need to do more. Since the last election, this government has set out an ambitious new agenda with further activities to make housing more affordable for all Canadians. We have planned for new initiatives such as Housing Accelerator Fund to help cities speed up development processes and expanded access to funding to support green home retrofit. We will be working with the provinces, territories, and municipalities to develop a fairness in real estate action plan to ensure there's more protection and transparency for home buyers and renters. We will also be collaborating with Indigenous partners to co-develop a new urban, rural, northern Indigenous strategy and Canada's first ever national Indigenous housing center. For young people working hard to get a foot on the property ladder, we introduced the first-time home buyer incentive that helps reduce their monthly mortgage payments without adding to their financial burden. It was also disappointed to hear the member Conservative colleague from Stormberg, Dundas, South Glengarry say that we should not be helping first-time home buyers in this House yesterday. On this side of the House, we believe that the first-time home buyers need more support. That's why we have continued to make the first-time home buyer incentive more accessible with more adjustments to come. To help make it easier for renters to get on the path to home ownership, we have also working on creating a fund to test, develop, and scale up rent-to-own projects across the country. Mr. Speaker, we are proud of our successes in improving house affordability, even as we look forward to doing more. With the support of this House, and I hope we can get the support of the member, with a plan on making house more affordable and more house ownership in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for her response, and we appreciate the 200 more units of affordable housing in Hamilton, although that's against a supply deficit of 110,000 homes, as I mentioned. So again, this government's response to any question on housing are formulaic and predictable and insufficient. So I'm going to ask again, what is this government doing for Roseanne, a young woman in my constituency, in her 20s in Upper Stony Creek, and she laments the fact that she's witnessed an exodus amongst her peers, leaving the country and for better affordability elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, the brain drain is real in this aspect, and the initiatives this government is continuing to repeat are like trying to fix a sinking ship by using a bucket. Canadians are still finding themselves drowning. When the government's plan is to build less units across all of Canada than just the deficit in Hamilton alone, clearly more needs to be done. So when is the government going to unveil a real plan to stabilize the housing market so that all Canadians can afford a home, not just the 700 households per week that are fortunate enough to be part of an announcement that is really too little, too late?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't want to get into the political rhetoric of we should do more. We have to do more. And I agree with the member. And I hope the member and the party opposite will support all the measures that will be put in place for the next months and years to come. Because we do agree with the member that there is an issue on the housing. And this government took plan with the housing strategy, with initiatives on ownership, with rent-to-own coming to, and I hope the member will support these measures when they come into the House.